Okay, today we're going to talk about the second tab interfoldable on Unit 15, which is circles. Yesterday we talked about the standard equation of circles. Today we're going to talk about the general equation for circles, which is the second tab, and kind of relate them both back and forth. So there's a couple slides, a little bit of work, but isn't too bad if you follow the steps. So I wrote above the standard form for equation of a circle, the x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. The general form is x squared plus y squared plus bx plus cy plus d equals 0. And in general, that looks like it's a lot of stuff, but you're going to see all we're going to really do is just FOIL stuff out and move it around to get the general form. So let's take a look at a few examples. Okay, so up here, this is the standard form. We're going to go ahead and write the general form. Really, all we're going to do is FOIL this out, and go ahead and move terms around to get the general form. So if you remember, x minus 5 squared is the same as x minus 5 times x minus 5. So if you FOIL that out, you end up getting x times x and x times negative 5. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. And then you get another negative 5 times x. And then negative 5 times negative 5 at the end is positive 25. So when you combine like terms, you end up getting x squared minus 10x plus 25. Okay, so I'm going to write that underneath. So x squared minus 10x plus 25. If you remember the pattern, then what you're basically doing, if you look at it, you're multiplying the first term right here times itself. That's your first term down here. Then you're multiplying the middle terms. Okay, so you're going to multiply this times this. You're going to double that for the middle, and then the last term times itself to get the 25. So I can take that shortcut over here. So let's look at this y plus 2 squared then. If I multiply y times y, you get y squared. Y times 2 is 2y. We're going to double that and get 4y, okay, with the middle, and then 2 times 2 is 4. So you can kind of take that shortcut to do this problem. So real easy for the general form then, here's what I'm going to do. I have an x squared and then a y squared, so I'm going to write that first. So x squared plus y squared. And then you end up having your x term next, so minus 10x. Okay, and then you put your y term after that, so plus 4y. And then you combine your number parts. So I have a 25 and a 4, so that's 29 equals 36. The last thing I want to do, if you saw in the general form, there's a 0 over in this spot, so I need to subtract 36 on both sides to actually get the general form. So my final answer will really be x squared plus y squared minus 10x plus 4y, and 29 minus 36 is negative 7 equals 0. So again, all I really did is multiply everything out, okay, and just write it in a certain order. I always put the x squared first, y squared second, and then the x's, y's, and the number at the end. And that's the general form. Okay, in general, it's more beneficial to have something written in standard form, so I'm going to go ahead and show you two examples on how to change general form to standard form. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to write it as something squared. We're going to pair up terms. So if you see right here, I have an x squared. I don't have any other x's, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it by itself. There's no x's here. Notice, though, how you have two things with y in it. So I'm going to go ahead and write those, and I'm going to put them in parentheses. So y squared plus 8y. And then, of course, I have the plus 1. So I'm going to leave that on the outside equals 0. So again, I'm going to pair up the y's and just kind of write them like that. In order to make this a perfect square, what you're going to do is you're going to take half of this middle number and square it. Okay, so half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So what that's going to do is that's going to make it a perfect square. So I'm actually going to put plus 16 and minus 16. Okay? And the reason I do that is because I can't just make up a number out of thin air. So that's really the same as 0. And I'm going to move this minus 16 out of here. So here's what I end up having. Okay, mathematically, I'm going to move that minus 16 out. So it looks like that. Okay. And now I can write this whole thing right here as a perfect square. Okay? And what you would find is that all you do is you take half of the middle number that you use, which is 4, And this right here equals y plus 4 squared. You can go ahead and FOIL that out and look at it. It'll equal y plus 4 squared. And then, of course, I have the minus 15 equals 0 when I combine those. Okay, so at the end, to write it in standard form, we just want to move this 15 over here. So at the end, which I'll write my final answer in blue, I really have x squared plus y plus 4 squared equals 15. Okay? And that would be your standard form, okay, that we did yesterday. And so what that means is the center is 0, okay? From here, I get 0, and right here I take the opposite, so negative 4. And your radius is always the square root of the last number all the way at the end, so it'd be the square root of 15. Okay? So let's look at one more of these examples. Okay, so same thing. So again, I'm going to go ahead and pair up my x's, pair up my y's, leave the number on the outside. So I have an x squared and an 8x, so x squared plus 8x. So I'm going to pair those up and leave a little bit of space. I have a y squared and a minus 12y. So again, I'm going to pair those up, leave a little bit of space. And then I have a plus 32 and the n equals 0. So what number is going to make this a perfect square that I'm going to add in with the x's? Well, remember, you take half of that number, so half of 8 is 4, and you square it. 4 squared is 16, so I'm going to put plus 16 minus 16. Okay, for this one right here, half of negative 12 is negative 6. When you square that, negative 6 squared is positive 36. So again, I'll put plus 36 and minus 36. And the key is here, I'm going to keep the positive number. I'm keeping that one. I'm just moving the negative one out. Okay, I'm just moving the negative one out on both of them. Okay, so here's what it's going to look like. Again, I'm going to keep the positive number. So I'm just going to write the positive number in there. But the two negative numbers, I'm going to move out all the way at the end. So originally I had plus 32 at the end. So that negative 16 from the first one's going to come out. And this negative 36 from the second one's also going to come out. And I'm just moving the negative ones out all the way at the end. So right here, you can go ahead and add these together. So negative 36, negative 16, and positive 32. So let's see. Negative 16, negative 36, that's negative 52, plus 32 is positive 20, or negative 20. So this whole thing right here would be minus 20. Okay, so I'll just leave that there. Okay, I'll go ahead and write this as something squared then. So remember, you just take half of that middle number. So that part's done. Okay, this one, half of my middle number, half of negative 12 is negative 6. Okay, so that one's done. And then this 20, if I move over to the other side, it would become positive 20. So that would be your equation in standard form. So based on that, okay, your center is negative 4, positive 6. And your radius is the square root at the number at the end, so square root of 20, which if you simplify it is 2 radical 5. Okay, and that's what your answer would be. So again, if you follow these steps, it's not hard to rewrite it. You just got to be able to write this as something squared in the middle.